A pergola does not do a very good job of protecting you from the hot sun. Why not make your own wire-hung canopy and install it on your pergola and get the shade and coolness that you desire?
Eric Grant here with Sailrite, and we've just completed a brand new wire-hung canopy system. So we have our wire-hung canopy installed, and it is great. Came just in the nick of time because the sun is baking us. So if you want to build one, all you need to do is take a few measurements of your pergola. In this video, we'll show you how to do that and pick out the fabric, whether it be a mesh fabric like we used here or a water-resistant fabric that's available from Sailrite, and put those calculations that you measure in the Sailrite fabric calculator. It'll tell you all the materials that you need, and this tutorial will show you how to make the canopies and install the wires so that you too can have a wire-hung canopy on your pergola.
The canopy is supported on your pergola via stainless steel wires.
This is a multiple wire hung canopy. In other words, there's more than one canopy. We also have a video showing how to make one wide canopy as well. This system is awesome for sunny days, and you can open and close it with either a webbing strap or a pulley open rope system that actually works with pulleys and you pull a control line.
Want to make one for your pergola? Let's evaluate your pergola.
So one of the things you need to consider before you start making your wire hung canopy and even consider putting a wire hung canopy on your pergola is how is it going to be attached to the pergola and how's it going to run. Now I can't really attach it here. I could attach it here and it could open and close this direction. I'd have to attach to the house over here because there's no pergola over here. And this beam is a little bit lower. What I like to do is I like to install the tensioners for the cable in a beam that's highest. And usually the wire hung canopies run with the beams along the top. As you can see, the beams are going this direction. So this is the most common way to install it. I have a high beam that I can install my fasteners in, and I have the canopy going along with the top beams, which is the way we're going to design it. So it'll open and close this direction, not that direction. The fabric calculator gives you a choice of building multiple wire hung canopies or one wide canopy. It's really your choice. The one wide canopy is not nearly as popular as multiple canopies. For us, we're going to do both systems on this pergola just to show you how it can be done, and it'll help you make a decision of exactly the kind of system that you want.
This is an example of a multiple canopy selection. Each canopy is typically a max of about 52 inches with an approximate 3-inch gap between canopies. Here's an example of one wide canopy. The maximum width is no more than 186 inches. It does provide more shade since there are no gaps between canopies. It can be a little bit more difficult to sew together, but it may be easier to install on your pergola. Let's get started and measure your pergola. Then we'll use a Sailrite fabric calculator.
Okay, so the first thing for our measurement is we have to consider this part that comes out. We don't want the canopy to obviously run into that. So the canopy can go no further than this point, and I'd like to keep it at least an inch or so away from this. So my measurement point is we're going to measure where we want the canopy to actually begin for the width and end for the width. So that's our first measurement. On that side of the pergola there is a building, and we want it to go underneath that overhang by a few inches but not obstruct the light. So where Ross is holding the end of the tape measure is right where the canopy will end. And if we come over here, I'm at 106, and I'm just going to use some chalk here to mark it at 106. And that is definitely clears this obstacle here. So our width for our canopy is 106 inches. So we marked it there at the beginning and the end with chalk.
Next, we'll measure the length from beam to beam.
And so Ross has the tape measure up against his beam, and my beam measures at 160 inches right here. So that is our length measurement that we'll enter in the fabric calculator. Perfect.
We make calculating easy by using Sailrite's fabric calculator. Visit the Sailrite website and click on Learn, then click on Fabric Calculator. Scroll down and click Wire-hung canopies. There are only 3 measurements you need to enter in the calculator and 3 options. You can always click the question mark if you have questions about the entry. Our width of our pergola was 106 inches, and the length from beam to beam was 160 inches. And the fabric width, we're choosing a Pfeiffertex stripe fabric, is 54 inches wide from the manufacturer. The options are shown in blue. We're going to choose a mesh fabric rather than a water-resistant fabric. If you select water-resistant fabric, chances are the canopy will hold water and you'll have to install grommets. But don't worry, the fabric calculator will calculate the materials list for your particular selections. We'll choose a mesh fabric so water can drain out. The next selection is the retraction extraction system. This means how does the canopy open and close? Let's demonstrate the 2 choices you have. The webbing strap system uses a length of strap with D-rings on the ends. It is used to open and close a single canopy at a time. To secure the canopy closed or open, a fender hook is used and then a boat hook or other tool is used to attach the D-ring to it. Now, the Pulley open-close system uses a line with pulleys to control up to 3 canopies at a time. The canopies are closed and opened with a control line running down the post of the pergola. The choice is yours. For a little more detail, click the question mark and read the comments there. The next selection is whether you want multiple canopies or one wide canopy. We already demonstrated the difference between the 2 at the beginning of this video. We're going to select multiple canopies for us, which is the standard, and hit the calculate button. All of the calculations are made for you in making the canopies. This one will require 2 canopy panels and 6 spans along the length. This calculator gives you exactly what you need to order from Sailrite to make these wire-hung canopies. You'll get a list of materials with the quantities required for your particular application. Click the area in blue and you'll get a hyperlink to that exact product. Enter the quantity, put it in your cart, and continue down the list, adding items as required. Scroll down some more and you'll see the option for either the Pulley open-close system or the webbing strap system with a materials list for those items as well. The calculator will automatically change based on your selections. Here are the tools that typically people don't have, and you may want to order those from Sailrite. And here are the household tools that more likely will be required. If you'd like to read about the general sewing instructions, we put them in text here, but the full tutorial is really the best place to watch how to build the canopies and also install them on your pergola. Now that we have our calculations and we know what to order, it's time to cut our fabric to size.
Okay, so we've entered all those calculations in the Sailrite fabric calculator for the wire-hung canopy, and if you look in panel dimensions, it says we need to cut our fabric to 182.26 inches for our particular pergola. So one of the ways that you can work on a table is you can actually take a tape measure and mark on your table. I've marked here at 60 inches with a piece of tape. That way I don't have to work on the floor and I can measure a long length of fabric. So I'm going to take my Pfeiffertex, line it up to this edge here. This edge isn't perfectly straight. We'll deal with that in a little bit. And then I'm going to take my marking utensil, and for Pfeiffertex, you've got a white scribe ball and a black scribe ball, and a number 2 pencil sometimes works as well. Obviously, we're going to use the black for this. I'm going to mark at 60 inches here on the fabric, and then I'm going to just move the fabric so that mark is at the edge of the table and measure out another 60 inches until I get the desired length that I need, and then we'll be able to cut it. Okay, so this is our final measurement here, and I'm going to use a T-square and draw across the entire length of the fabric, and we'll cut it. Now this will be my square edge. The other side is not. We don't need to worry about that because there's excess fabric. I believe there's 6 extra inches in the total length of fabric just as a fudge factor. So that end we're not going to straighten. We're only going to straighten this one. We'll start here. So I'm going to cut this with scissors. Pfeiffertex Plus and Textiline do not unravel much, so you can just use scissors. If you're using a marine grade canvas like Sattler or Sunbrella, you will probably want to use a hot knife to prevent unraveling. The fabric calculator says for ours we need it to be 53 inches before hemming, which is right there, so I'm going to follow that stripe. Now if you had a pattern that was really recognizable, you may want to center your pattern and cut an offset off of each end, but we don't have that. Our stripes are rather random. So we're going to cut all the way down this length, making our panel 53 inches.
In this chapter, we'll show you how to hem the two long edges of each one of your canopies.
There's no right side or wrong side yet, but we're going to put a hem down the long edges of this. We're going to measure over 1.5 inches to create a 3/4 inch hem. So right here, the clear acrylic ruler is on 1.5. We're going to strike a line, and that line is going to go all the way down. Now, it's hard to see the line because of the color, but all I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little arrow there. That way I know that's the line I want to match up to as I run down the length of the fabric. So this line would go all the way down. I'm going to put double-sided tape on. I'm just going to show you real quick what we're going to do here in this short little corner, even though it's going to be going all the way down this side and all the way down the other long side. We're going to peel up the transfer paper, revealing the double-sided tape, and then we're going to fold to that line that we struck, or the line in the fabric. This is a line that I can follow in the fabric, and that creates a 3/4 inch hem, a single hem down both long edges. Do that on both long edges. Now regarding the long hems along the two sides, do you need them? Because a lot of people ask that question. You probably don't need it, but the strength and the integrity of the fabric can be at jeopardy if you just have the raw edges. So we recommend a single hem on the long edges. Now before you create the hem on this end and also on this end, this is after I've folded it, check to make sure that it is our desired finished width.
You can check that on the Sailrite fabric calculator. Ours is supposed to be 51.5.
And ours is supposed to be 51.5, and we're a little bit short. Not going to matter. You just want to make sure that you've done everything accurately just by checking to see if it's close. If it's within 1/4 inch or so of your desired finished width, you're fine. I'm going to put my magnetic guide on at 5/8, which I know is in between those measurements, 5/8 from the needle, as you can see right here. And we're going to sew down both long edges, and I will do a little bit of reversing here. And we're sewing a 6mm straight stitch, and I'm using just a polyester Tex 90 thread. And we will just straighten up the fabric and sew down this long edge and obviously the opposite long edge. Now let me show you what I do when I get to the bulk of the fabric. Bury your needle when you stop. Okay, so what I do with my arm is I put it under here just to keep any fabric from getting stuck on the tabletop. Now you don't have to have an industrial tabletop, but if you do, this is how I do it. Arms under here supporting the fabric. I grab the fabric here and I make sure it's up against the guide. When I get to my hand here where I'm holding the fabric, I will stop, make sure the needle's buried. All right, there. And then I reposition again and I put my arm underneath and continue down the run. We'll reverse when we get to the other end.
Next up, we're going to create the sleeves for our spline cording so we can slide it into the awning track.
So the two long hems are done on the two sides. We're going to flip the panel over so the hem is facing the tabletop. And we do that because we want water not to get trapped in our hem. So this will actually be facing the sun. The hem will be facing the ground. Okay, so let's work on this end that's square over here.
Scroll down to General Sewing Instructions on the Sailrite Fabric Calculator. These are the general sewing steps which may be helpful in keeping you on track. We're on step 2. We already finished step 1 above.
With the hem facing down, this is the square edge. We're going to take our clear acrylic ruler and we're going to create a 1/2 inch hem here by marking 1 inch from the edge all the way down one of the short edges, the one that's trimmed so that it's 90 degrees or perpendicular to the long edges. And I'll show you what we do after this. We're going to take our double-sided tape and we're going to go all the way down this edge. I'm just going to stop here to show you what we're going to do. And then we're going to peel off the transfer paper and we're going to fold to this line all the way down the end. Okay, and then after this hem is all the way done, then we're going to take our clear acrylic ruler and we're going to measure 2 inches to create another a 1-inch hem now. So 2 inches up from that folded edge, we'll strike a line there, we'll put double-sided tape here, and then we'll fold this over to create the sleeve at 1 inch. These sleeves need to be sewn at 3/4 of an inch. So I put it on the 3/4 inch and the needle's in the center position. And this is our first sleeve at the end, and we're going to put the foot down, and we do want to do some heavy reversing here because this may have some stress on it. So I'm going to go back and forth at least a couple times. And then we're going to sew down all the way down the length, and we're going to do some heavy reversing at the end. We have 6 spans for our canopy, and each span will be 29.21 inches for us from sleeve fold to sleeve fold according to the fabric calculator.
The Sailrite fabric calculator shows these equations here in the canopy panel dimensions. 6 spans, each span is 29.21 for us. Yours will likely be different.
So what I like to do is I like to take a yardstick or another device, and I like to measure the 29.21. So 29.21 is just shy of 1/4, and it doesn't have to be exact, but we want it to be exact for all the spans. So that's why I mark it on a marker, and I just use a Sharpie to mark it there. So I'm going to measure from the fold edge here at 0, and I'm going to come down to my 29.21, which is marked on the ruler, and I'm going to mark this side. Then I'm going to do the exact same thing over here, starting right on the fold and measuring to that same measurement, and I'm going to mark here as well. Now I did that with the hems facing down, the hems here, but this sleeve is facing up. So if this is the correct way to mark it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my fingers and I'm going to grab it right where I have those marks here and here, and I'm going to fold this fabric under like that. So the fabric is on the underside. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to fold the fabric to that mark, follow the mark, and I'm going to crease it on that mark, which is right there. Hopefully you can see that. So it's creased there. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to crease it on the mark here. This is how we're going to create each one of the sleeves. It's pretty easy. So it's creased right there. Now if I've done it right, this edge should be lined up with the edge of this, and that means it's perfectly perpendicular to it. So I'm going to crease it with my hands right now to the other end. The fabric creases so-so. It's not perfect, but it does pretty much retain a little bit of a memory. And this should be even with this edge, and it is. And at that position, I'm going to staple it. So I'm going to sew 3/4 inch in, so I'm going to staple probably a 1/2 inch from the edge. It's not crucial because you can sew through these staples. And we're going to do it about every 6 inches, making sure that I'm on the mark, and I still am over here. So I'm going to do it here too, and then I'm going to go, oops, out of staples, all the way over here to the last staple, about every 6 to 8 inches. So I got new staples. Now what if you're doing a marine grade fabric like Sattler or Sunbrella? Stapling it is not a big deal because this is where our sleeve, our spline is going to go, and it's going to be fed in a channel. So you won't see these holes because it's going to be basically hidden within that awning track. Now I also get this question: can I staple all of the sleeves in place down the whole length of the fabric? No, you can't. They typically will come up. So we will need to take each one of these over to the sewing machine and sew them, and then we'll show you how to do the next one. It's basically the same, but it's just a little bit of a tweak. So let's go to the machine. Okay, this is again at 3/4 of an inch, so I have changed nothing on the magnetic guide from our first one. We do want to do some heavy sewing. And now we just sew along this fold all the way down the length. Now I'm going to remove all those staples that we put in this, and I'm just using a screwdriver to do that. It works pretty well. This is our first sleeve at the beginning. This is the one we just did, and it's folded under like this. So this is the first sleeve over here. just as a reference, and I'm going to take my yardstick, this is a process, put it on 0 right at the fold, and then I'm going to come over here to where I marked it. So then we're going to mark it at the 29.21 for us, which should be right at the end of this fold. It doesn't have to be exactly on it, but it has to be very, very close. And we're going to do the same thing on this end over here. I'm going to do the same thing again, just grabbing this panel, leaving the one underneath, and right at the marks. And I'm going to do this, tucking that fabric underneath, and then straightening out my fabric. Let's see, where's that mark at? So here's my fold. And one simple way to make sure that it stays on the fold is to actually fold it. I'm pulling the fabric to that fold line and crease it right on the fold line and then staple it now, and then I can go to the other end and staple it. And that way we have it right on the folds. So the fabric's underneath like that, and we just keep doing that until we have all of our spans. We have 6 spans, which means there'll be 7 sleeves when you reach the final one. Now, if you want to make sure this stays in place when you take it to the machine, this isn't necessary, but it's not a bad idea, is to staple it in the hem about 6 to 8 inches down from the end on both sides. I'm going to take this to the machine, and we're going to sew it in exactly the same manner, and we're going to keep going.
All of our sleeves are sewn in step 4. Now we come to the final sleeve, so we're now at step 5. Let's explain it.
All of the sleeves have been sewn in, and we're in the last sleeve, which is at the end. And the sleeves are down, as you can see here on the tabletop. And this is my last piece of fabric with the last sleeve. So I'm going to fold it back on top like that. And then I'm going to splay this one out like that, because we can determine basically where this end is, and measure from the edge like we did before, okay, which is right there on our ruler. And this we need to add, so this is why this one's different. We need to add 1.5 inches from this mark, okay? So 1.5 inches, I'm going to put it on 27.5, and that would be all the way to 29. And this will be our cut line. Okay, so I'm going to come over to this side, and I'm going to mark it. Should be right there where that fold is, and it is, so right there. And again, we want to add 1.5 inches to that for our folding. So let's see, where's the, yeah, this is the inch. So 1.5 right here, and this will be our cut line. So I'm going to strike a line with a straight edge from this line to the 1.5 inch line that extends beyond our sleeve fold point. So we've struck our line. We want to make sure that we don't cut into our good fabric, and we're just going to use scissors because this is a material that doesn't unravel. So if you're using a canvas like an acrylic, you don't really need to use a hot knife for this, because this is going to be hemmed under. You won't see the raw edge, so you can use scissors there too. Now I'm going to flip it so the sleeves are up so that I can fold the hem towards where the sleeves are. So I'm going to flip the whole panel around. All right, so now our sleeves are up. We have this cut. First thing we're going to do is mark 1 inch from this edge and create a 1/2 inch hem, just like we did on the other one. The process is the same now. So 1 inch in, all the way across, double-sided tape, fold to that line, and then I'll show you what's next after that. So this is folded to the 1/2 inch, or to the 1 inch line that we made. Now we're going to make a line at 2 inches, and we'll fold to that line as well using the clear acrylic ruler. Mark all the way down, and then, if you remember right from the first step, just like we did here, double-sided tape. I'll stop right here just to do an example. Peel off the transfer paper, revealing that acrylic glue, and fold to that 2 inch line, all the way down. All right, we're going to sew 3/4 inch from the fold, and make sure that we do some reversing, fairly heavy, at the beginning and the end, and we'll just sew all the way down this sleeve. And this is our final sewing step for this canopy. Now, if you have more canopies, do this for every single one of them, however many is required for your pergola. This is the spline cording that comes, well, you have to order it. It's a 1/4 inch. And we want to feed it through every one of the channels. Now the end channels, they have a bigger hem on the end, but they will feed through fairly easily. You could always use an electrical, what do they call those things? It's kind of like a thing to pull wires through your wall if you want to, but I don't think it's necessary. We're almost to the end. It's going to run into this hem right there. Whoops, it didn't. It's kind of nice. Now, what I want to do is I want that to be almost flush with the edge. So I'm going to push it back in so that it's flush, and then I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut it so it's right on that edge. Don't cut your fabric. And then we're going to do this for these as well. These are easier. It's not as much fabric because there's no 1/2 inch hem. Same process, all of these. This cording is being a little bit stubborn, and because it's running into the hem. If you take a screwdriver like this and just put it in the end, and then if I go to the other end and push, watch, it'll help it. Boom, right through. Little hint.
An awning track is used at the end of each span to hold the canopy up at the wire and also for the snap clip. If you go back to the Sailrite fabric calculator, here's the awning track selection. It told us to order 14 segments and they each need to be 51.5 inches long. Sailrite stocks 3 sizes. The calculator tells us we need 14 pieces of that 52-inch track. Now we need to cut it to size.
The Sailrite fabric calculator says for our pergola that we need 14 heavy-duty 180-degree awning track. And we need to cut it to 51.5 inches. But I would not do that. What I would do is I'd cut it according to the canopy that you made, because your canopy may be slightly off a little bit. So let's take a look at the track first. You can see that the side profile of this track is very thick indeed, and it's 180 degrees, so the actual, when it hangs like this, it hangs straight down instead of being at a 45-degree angle like most tracks. So this is really good stuff. So what I'm going to do is I have 6 spans, which means that I have 7 tracks. So I have 7 tracks, and I want to cut each one of them individually to the canopy that I've made. So once I measure one, then I'll just cut the rest, the six remaining ones, to the exact same size. So I butt it up to that side, and then I mark it. So I want it really to be the exact same size, though it probably wouldn't matter if you were slightly off here. So that's where we want to cut it. So I'm going to use a clamp. Let's just do it like this so they don't have the stick sticking up in the air, and clamp it to a table. You could also use a vise as well, and you want to get that fairly close to the edge of the table so you have good support. Clamp it down well. This is the secret in cutting this stuff. And then you can just use a hacksaw with a lot of teeth that's made for metal. This is an aluminum, anodized aluminum, and we're just going to cut right on that mark. This takes some time, and there are other means to cut this as well, but this is just what most people have. I will not have to go to the gym tonight. Nice. We're going to do that with all of the track pieces. We're going to use this one now as our gauge for how all the other ones should be cut. We'll mark it and cut it in the same way. I like to use a file and actually make sure there are no burrs, especially on the inside where it could cut the fabric. So this is just a round file. It's a little bit on the big side, but we will make it work for us.
Onto the awning track, we'll install the snap clips next.
So after all the track is cut, then what you need to do is measure for where you're going to have each one of the clips installed. And they can be installed anywhere from 6 to 8 inches from the end. I usually always go with 8. So I'm going to mark it here at 8 inches from the end, and I'll do the same thing on the opposite end, 8 inches from that end. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this measuring device here, and I set it at 3/4 of an inch, and I want my hole to be at 3/4 of an inch. So I mark it like that, and then I mark it like that to create an X. And we'll do that at the other end as well, and that's where we're going to drill for our clip. So here I am just marking the other end. Right there. That's a pretty ugly cross, but you get the point. This, on the ends, 8 inches from this end and 8 inches from the other, is done on all the tracks for the canopy. And I like to use something to pre-punch a hole so that my drill bit doesn't wander. And I'm using a spring punch. I'll just do this about that many times, and I've got a nice divot that my drill bit can wander on, or follow. And then I have scrap wood under here. This is actually a nice piece of wood, but it was a prototype. And I'm going to use a 1/4 inch drill bit, and we're going to drill right through this with the track laying flat against a substrate that can be sacrificed. Now I'm into the wood. The beauty of this is if you put it flat on a surface, watch this when you turn it over. There's hardly any burrs at all. The wire hung canopy snap clip assembly is a 2-pack, so each one will do one piece of track if you're using a multiple canopy system. Let's open the clip up. This is stainless steel. And what we want to do is we want to install it on this side of the track. So the first thing we want to do is we want to use the spacer here. This is just the thin one. There's a thicker one. Put it on the stainless steel bolt. Put it through here. Sorry, goes through the back side like that. That separates the stainless steel from the aluminum. And then we put the fat one, which you can see it's much fatter than the other one, right over top of this bolt. We're going to put the clip on so that they face one another to the middle of the track, away from the ends. And then we're going to use the nylock nut. This is stainless steel as well, and we're going to thread it on until it obviously runs into the nylock locking system. Now I need tools. On the back side of the 3/16 stainless steel bolt, I'm going to put a Phillips screwdriver, and then I'm going to use an 11mm socket with a screwdriver, and I've got the torque setting set so it's the lowest it'll go, and I just want to hold it, and you want it to be tight, but not so tight that you can't turn it. So it's under some pressure, but I can still turn it to the upward position. And now we have a clamp system that is locked in place and will accept the stainless steel 1x19 cable. Nice. We'll do the same thing on the other end.
This following chapter depends on whether you've chosen the pulley or the webbing strap system.
You have two choices for an open and close system. One is the pulley open close system, which uses ropes and pulleys, and the second one is a webbing strap system. Let's show you a little bit about how they work, and then you can select the one that you want to use.
The webbing strap system uses a length of strap with D-rings on the ends. It is used to open and close a single canopy at a time. To secure the canopy closed or open, a fender hook is used, and then a boat hook or other tool is used to attach the D-ring to it. Now, the pulley open-close system uses a line with pulleys to control up to 3 canopies at a time. The canopies are closed and opened with a control line running down the post of the pergola. The choice is yours.
This is the hardware. You'd have to make the strap for the webbing strap system, and this is some of the hardware for the pulleys and rope system. We have 2 canopies, so you only want to do this for 1 track per canopy. So depending on the amount of canopies, remember 1 track per canopy for the hardware for the open close system, whether it be the pulley or the webbing strap. Okay, I measured from end to end and found the center and marked it. I also marked 3/4 inch down from the edge, and X marks the spot.
The first technique is for the pulley open-close system.
For the pulley open close system, you want to use a 3/8 inch drill bit. It's a large hole and you want to drill it right in the center, about 3/4 inch down from the top edge. Use a sacrificial surface on the bottom so you don't go through any good table. So we're going to do that to the second track since we have 2 canopies.
And now the hardware for the webbing strap system.
This is a strap eye. It doesn't go on this side, but we can drill from this side because it lays flat like this. So we want that to be in the center and basically in the same plane as that line. So I'm going to put a circle here. So we're going to mark the holes. We're going to use an 1/8 inch drill bit, and we're going to drill through these because a rivet's going to be used here. So drill through both holes, and when we're done with this, we don't want to put the strap eye on yet because we have to make the webbing strap, because the loop of the webbing strap has to go in here, but it's going to go on this side like that. So let's make the webbing strap next, and then we'll install this.
This chapter should only be watched if you selected the webbing strap system. If not, skip it.
So now we're going to show you how to make the webbing strap. This is an optional choice if you don't use the open-close rope pulley system. Now, when we show you the webbing strap on the actual pergola that we're using as an example, you'll notice that the webbing strap is too long. Well, we corrected all that. So what you see now about the measurements for the webbing strap will actually fit much better than what you see in the video when we demonstrate it.
If you selected the webbing strap system in the fabric calculator and you scroll down, you'll see a list of materials for the webbing strap system in lieu of the pulley open close system.
So we have a polyester 1-inch webbing and it's black. Then what we want to do is we want to take the span measurement. Ours is 29.21, so right about there, and then we need to add 5 inches to that. So let's just go 29. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to cut it to 34 inches for us. Yours will be different depending on the span that you have. We're going to cut it with a hot knife. So on one end of the webbing, run a D-ring. This is a number 0 D-ring, 1 inch, and make a loop that's approximately 1 inch. Doesn't have to be exact. That looks good like that. Take it to the machine. So I'm using some black thread that I had laying around. That way it just looks better. And I'm doing it with a zigzag stitch, and I'm going to sew forward and back several times to secure it well. You can do it with a straight stitch as well. Now, just to keep this bottom leg from popping up, I'm going to sew with another stitch right here at the end. We have this sewn on now with 2 zigzag stitches reversing several times. So I'm going to take the end of this and I'm going to fold this back to 2 inches from the edge of the webbing. So from here to here. And it doesn't have to be exact, it just has to be close. If you went to the edge of the D-ring, it'd be almost 3 inches, which looks like right about there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this to the machine and I'm going to sew it right along here, creating an eye here. So this will basically be loose. So take it to the machine. We want it a little bit less, like 3/4 inch of an eye. So I'm going to sew it right about here. Again, you don't have to be exactly accurate with this. And this is just going to be 1 zigzag stitch. So going back and forth, just 1 stitch to form that loop, but make sure you do it heavily because it is going to come under some stress. And that should be sufficient. So here's what you should get. This goes like that, and this forms the eye, and you are done with this end. Now on the opposite end of the webbing, we're going to put a D-ring in. We're going to fold it over to approximately 1 inch. Doesn't matter which way it folds. And we're going to sew 2 zigzag stitches yet again. So we're going to put the strap eye on over here, and I'm going to put this webbing loop on. So this is the forward facing piece, and I really want the short edge to be on top here, and the longer edge will be underneath. So I'm going to run the strap eye through this eye that we made, and it will have to compress a little bit to get in there. And then I'm going to take my pop rivet, which I've already got loaded in the riveting gun, And we're going to go through this hole. Oops, was that? Well, yeah, there we go. I was wondering if that was an 1/8 inch drill, but it looks like it's working. Then I'm going to put that one in, make sure the webbing's still on there. We're going to go to this one, making sure that we're not pinching the webbing underneath that portion, and we're not now. Load my next rivet in my riveting tool and go through this one as well. Now we have the webbing strap system secured. Through that hole. And there we go. And this is what it should look like when you're done.
This webbing strap is too long. We made modifications to the sewing as discussed earlier. In this chapter, we'll slide the sleeves onto the awning track.
Whatever the number of spans you have, you'll have one extra track. We have 6 spans, so we have 7 tracks. We've got all of the snap hooks in place. So let's get our fabric and insert the cording into the track. We're going to start with the track that has the push-in grommet or the strap eye. The strap eye would be on this side if it had a strap eye. We're going to put this side to the inside, so this will be the front. And we want to start it here. Now this is going to be the most difficult one to install, and if you need to, you can always use a file and file these down, which will make it easier, but since this has a hem, this is going to be a little bit more difficult. Okay, so we're going to insert it in here, and this has a little bit of a thickness, so it's going to be a little bit hard to get it started. You just got to work it in, and if it's damaging the fabric, file the aluminum. It's a small opening and the fabric's getting caught. As again, I'm going to tell you that the other ones are going to be much easier. This is the hardest one on the ends. Once it gets started, it will go. So let's see, it's already almost in. Look at that. So we're in. We're going to push it all the way to the other end. When we reach that hem over there, it's going to be a little bit hard to push past that hem as well. So you can see here that it's stuck on that fold that we have on the long side. So just wiggle the fabric until that fold is in clearance, and then wiggle, 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 and then somebody should really pull on the other end. So on the back side, it's stuck on a piece too, so I just have to use my fingernail and make sure that it gets past that hem. And there we go. Now I'm going to go to the other side and pull it in so it's flush. So that was the tough one, and the other end will be tough too, but these in the middle are really easy. So we want to go over here and we want to make sure it's going the same direction as this. Okay. This one's going to be much easier. We'll get it started on here. There we go. Slide it down until it's flush or very close to flush with the end. Wiggle it a little bit, or come down there and get it in position. There we go. All right, we're going to keep doing that, inserting them all in the same direction as you can see here until we get to the end. So here's a little trick that may help with the middle sleeves, and that is to lift it up and get it started on the end, and then just push the rope in, and it goes in nicely that way. Okay, we're going to use number 8 1/2-inch stainless steel hex head screws that you get from a hardware store, and we're going to screw it into the channel and go through the fabric so that they don't migrate out in time. And we're only going to do this on one end, and we want to do it within the hem allowance of 3/4. So I'm going to take an 1/8-inch drill bit, and I'm going to drill right through the channel, only on one surface. I don't want to go through the back side. So right like this. Once I'm through the one side of the channel, I will put the screw in place as a self-tapping screw. And the idea here is that this holds it in place, but you can also remove the screw and pull the fabric out if you wanted to replace it and use the channel again. And we're going to do that on this, every single piece on only one end only. So the next one would go right here as well. I'm going to make sure this is on the end, so right there.
For anyone using a water-resistant fabric, you'll need to install grommets to allow water to escape. If you're using a mesh, you can skip this chapter to the next.
For our multiple canopies, we are using a mesh material called Fifertex Plus, which does allow water to eventually flow through the fabric. But if you're using a fabric that is water resistant, like Sattler or some umbrella fabric, then water will not flow through, and you need to consider putting in grommets to allow water to escape, because the water may pool up on the water resistant fabric. And so what we recommend for multiple canopies, since they're typically no wider than around 52 inches or so, is to put one number one plain washer grommet in the center of each span and at the fold. In other words, when the canopy is totally closed and in a storage position at one end of the beam, and the fold would be at the bottom of that. And we don't have to do it since we're using a mesh fabric, but we are going to show a sample piece of fabric and how to install this number one plain washer grommet in your water resistant fabric if you're using that. This is some scrap fabric, and this is a number one plain washer grommet kit, and it includes a die set and a hole cutter and a little cutting pad. So I'm going to do this on some scrap just to show you how it's done at that position that we marked. I'm going to put the cutting pad underneath, which is a block of wood, and we're going to put it there. This is the cutter. We just hold it on the spot where we want to punch a hole. There is no need to reinforce the fabric at that location because it's not going to come under any stress. So we're going to put the male portion in the hole that we just created, like that, and we're going to put the anvil part down here, put it on there, and we're going to put the washer on top, and it has a concave side. You can see it here, that goes down. The convex side goes up, and then we're going to put this on. You do have to give it a few blows to set the grommet. Roll it to get it out because sometimes it sticks. You just want it to be installed so that everything's flat. For better water flow, this has a ridge, so this should be the underside if possible, and this should be the side facing the sun because there's less of a ridge, but it's not a big deal if you get it reversed.
Adding control tapes to the canopies is an optional step. This is a top view of a canopy without a control tape. There's no webbing on the snap clips. Adding a control tape can help control the swag of each span. It is an optional step. Here the canopies do not use a control tape, and they still look good. But here the control tape is used. You can see it along the top. And you can see the spans are more consistent from beginning to end. So the choice is yours. You can use it or not.
Okay, this is an optional step. It's what we call the control tape, which is basically a webbing that goes from snap clip to snap clip. And what it does is it controls the swag, in other words, the built-in curve of each of the panel spans. So if you choose not to use it, what you'll find is at the end of your canopy you'll have more, in other words the one that's up against the fixed area, it'll have more of a swag, and the one at the other end will be less of a swag. If you use the control tape, which is webbing, which we're going to show next, that can help control that so that the swag between every single span is more consistent. The choice is yours. Let's show you how to make one if you want to do it. So use a calculator and put in the length from beam to beam. Ours is 160. Always subtract 3 inches. This is for the gap at the ends, and that comes up with your total. So your length minus 3, and then you divide it by the number of spans. So divide it, for us we have 6 spans. So we need to put a slit every 26.16 inches, and that's what we're going to do next. I've loosened the screw on the Sailrite edge hot knife, and we're using the precision blade, cutting foot and blade, and I'm going to take off the foot so that I have a nice sharp edge with a hot knife. And so here's 26 on my tempered cutting glass, and this is a little bit less than a quarter. It's about the half. So I'm going to put a line with a marker here because this will come up easily on my glass after I'm done. And the first, let me put my webbing over here. The first slit, you want to do it an inch. So here it's on 0, and I'm going to use this blade, and I'm going to heat up the hot knife that way it doesn't unravel, and I'm going to put it an inch from the end. So just like that. And I need to make 7 slits. So I'm going to put this on 0. Then I'm going to come down to my measurement over here, and I'm going to put it right there. And I'm going to go back and forth just a little bit right in the middle of the webbing going this direction. And then we move this to 0, right there, 0 inches. And we repeat the steps until we have 7 slits, since we have 6 spans. So however many spans you have plus 1. So we are going to put holes in this 7 times because we have 7 tracks. So, and that way we don't have to measure the whole length of the webbing. When we get to the last one, we'll just make sure we have an extra inch hanging over the edge. So we'll do this for every single wire run. So here's how this is going to work. So we're going to open up the snap. We're going to put this on, and then it's going to flip around like that, and it's going to rest here. This will make the swag even when the canopy is fully closed. Okay.
We'll be taking our canopies and hardware to the pergola. The first step is to install the cable tensioners in the wood.
I've removed one section of awning track from my multiple canopy system, and here's where we marked the beginning, and so I'm going to put the end of the track up to that point, and we are also going to have a rope pulley system. And because of that, we're going to have blocks that are at the middle position of the multiple canopy, and we want the block to basically be away from the top of the bar, which means that I need at least a 3-inch spot up from the top of the bar to attach the hardware for this block. So I have to take that into consideration to where I'm going to mount the track up and down. So I've got a tape measure here, and in the middle, I probably should mark the middle of this track so I know what obstacles are in the way, because you want to position this before you install any of the hardware. So I'm going to find the middle of this track first and mark it. I've marked the center of the track, and I need 3 inches of clearance to install my hardware, and so this beam is not in the way. So I'm good, which means I can raise it up almost that high here and still have a location to mount our hardware. I'll show you a shot of what that looks like after we're done, just to see what I was talking about here.
Here's a look ahead at the single block pulley on the end of the canopy where it folds up against the beam. And you can see it's about 3 inches up from the top of the track.
So I'm going to mount it here. We've got it flush to that end, and I have plenty of room for hardware. I'm going to mark with my chalk where this fastener would go, right there. And I'm going to make sure it's level before I mark the next one. One way to make sure that it's level is to take a tape measure for the first mark you made and measure down to the bottom of the beam. Ours is 4 inches, so that's where I need to position the other spot for the tensioner. So right here for the other one, and it's at 4 inches.
We actually moved the marks up a ½ inch to gain more headroom.
Okay, so I'm holding the track up here, and I'm going to have Ross mark the end of the track with the chalk, just lightly. Perfect. Using the same track, I'm going to put it on that mark that we made it for us 106 inches, and make sure that I have a gap of about 3 inches. It can be less. It just needs to have a gap to make sure the canopies aren't going to be touching each other. So I'm going to measure that gap. Yeah, my gap is a little bit less than 3. That's perfect. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the location here, and then we'll measure up 4 inches for each one of these.
We went ahead and marked each location, but we forgot to check for any obstacles for the open-close rope pulley system. We need to hold our track up with the middle marked and check to see if there are any obstacles above the middle position.
Now I do have an issue here. For the hardware, it's going to run into this beam. No problem, I'll just move this over a little bit and remark it so that I can put my strap eye right above that point. So I'm going to move it over so this line is just a little bit beside this beam.
Since the gap between canopies can be 1.5 inches up to 3 inches, you can move the track over for any obstacles that may be in the way.
That just moves me over a little bit. So we have this side mark. Now we have to do the opposite side. And I'm going to use the building right here, and that mark is 1 inch out from this building. So I'm going to put the mark on the other side, exactly that same distance on this beam, 4 inches up. Then I'll measure to the next point from this mark, and we'll write those measurements down. So this is 1 inch from the building. I'm going to put a mark, and then I'm going to measure 4 inches up, and we're going to do an X marks the spot. The next measurement is 35 1/8, which is right there. We'll put a mark here and then measure up 4 inches. As you can see, when I hold up my bar on those marks, I am clear of any obstacles for my pulley. Okay, this is the last of our 2-pick canopy system, and I'm checking for obstructions in the middle. We're okay, otherwise I'd move things around. And I'm clear of this post. So I am good, but I'm clear by about at least an inch. These are the cable tensioners that we're going to be installing in our pergola. If you're using softwood, you may want to try a 1/2 inch bit. If you're using hardwoods, 9/16 inch. You don't have to use a spade bit like this, but this brand makes a really good spade bit. We're going to do a 1/2 inch because I believe this is cedar. If it doesn't thread well, we'll move up to the 9/16. We want to tape the depth that I want to drill, and I want to drill so I have a little bit of space back behind the cable tensioner. And obviously I don't need a drill past the flange. So I'm going to put a piece of tape on my bit indicating where I want to stop drilling. Electrical tape works great for this. This is a white electrical tape. There we go. So I'm going to try to drill as level as I can right at our spot and stop at the tape. Went a little bit deeper than I wanted to. There we go. This cable driver can go into a regular chuck. I'm using an impact wrench, and so I'm using an 11mm socket. It's not magnetic, so it can fall out, but this is how we're going to drive the cable tensioner into our structure. So the end of this goes through like such, and we can drive it in, and let's see if our hole's big enough. Now when I get closer to the flange, I'm probably going to use a wrench. And the reason being is that I want this bottom hole to be vertical, up and down, and a little bit hard to do with a mechanical tool. I'm going to use my wrench now. Okay, so now I'm going to use my wrench, and I'm going to put that so that it's vertical a little bit more. And the flange is up against our structure. One more twist. There we go. Good. So this is the driver in a standard drill. It doesn't work as well as an impact wrench, but it does work if you don't have an impact wrench. See, it just doesn't have the power, so we're going to have to use a wrench the rest of the way. That's why I recommend an impact wrench, because a little bit more laborious.
All 4 cable tensioners are installed on this end of the beam for our 2 canopy panels. And look how great they look. In this chapter, we're going to show you how to cut the wire rope to size, and we're going to tension it in our cable tensioners.
When you undo cable wire, stainless steel wire, make sure that you're being careful that it doesn't all uncoil on you once you take off the plastic wrap, because it can just kind of blow up and uncoil. So I'm going to hold my hand here to prevent that from happening. And there we go. Now, if you take the cable wire, we'll take that off at the end, and if you just start taking it off the top, it'll kink it. But if you take it off like this by having the roll on the ground flat, then you will have no kinks in your stainless steel 1x19 wire. Onto the end, I'm going to put a key first, and then I'm going to put a oval sleeve to lock it in place. And since this was cut, you may have to rotate this around to get it on the end. Once it gets on the cut end, it'll slide smoothly. Let me show you how. Rotate, rotate, rotate until it's on. Push it back, let it fall, and then take the sleeve and do the same thing. This is the first end. And we're going to just basically put it like a 1/4 inch or so from the end. So now I'm going to use the crimper, and these are set on 8. You can see the 8 here and the 8 here, and these roll around for different crimping abilities. We want them both on 8. Open it up, and we're going to crimp this twice. And I'm going to do it close to the one end. Make sure that's all the way on the sleeve, and then crimp down hard at the 1/4 inch, approximately, right about there. There's one, nice crimp, and then the second one's going to go here. I think I'm in the right spot. Yep, crimp. Okay, so that sleeve is crimped on the wire nicely.
After crimping, if the tool was set up appropriately, you'll see the number 8 on the sleeves.
It doesn't matter which side you start on. We're just going to start with this one, and we're going to feed this in, making sure the key goes inside as well, like that. And then usually you can just let go of the cable. Now I'm going to set up my set screw, and using a 3/32 Allen key that's like on a screwdriver thing makes this job a lot easier. It doesn't come with a kit, but you can buy one at your hardware store. And you want to thread this in until the end is flush, like there, and then 3 turns in. 1 full turn, 2 full turns, and 3 full turns, and stop. We're going to go to the other end now. When you measure the tensioner, you can see that it's 1 1/4 inches. We're going to cut the cable to 1 inch, and that's going past the edge of the board. So at 1 inch, I'm going to use my chalk right above where the tensioner is and mark the beam. That way I can take my wire and I can pull it by hand. So I'm pulling on the cable, and then I'm going to mark it with my marker right where that chalk is, and that's 1 inch from the edge of the board. We're going to cut it there. You need a good pair of wire cutters to cut the cable well. This is stainless steel 1x19, and these are available from Sailrite, but you can also get it good cable cutters at a hardware store. I'm going to put it right on my mark right there. Nice cut. Now we're going to insert the end of the cable into our tensioner, pull it taut with our hand as tight as we can, and then mark the cable again with our marker right in the flange of the tensioner and pull it out. So first I'm going to put the key on the cable and run it down. And then I'm going to put the sleeve on the cable, and then I'm going to take the key, put it on my mark, and move it 1 key's distance away from the mark, like right there. We're going to crimp this on with it at this distance. Now, do you have to be exactly accurate? No, but you want to be about there. I have a helper that's holding the cable, which makes this a lot easier. I'm just going to crimp it on there, and then I'm going to move it around. I'm going to get it in position without crimping it all the way. Yeah, that's a good position. Then I'm going to position this right where I want it, which is there, and I'm going to crimp. Okay, so now we have it exactly where we want it. It's a little bit further, but it's going to be fine. And you can see there's an 8 on the crimp as well on the sleeve. That means you've got the right settings on this. And then we're going to crimp it one more time, just like we did the other end. And this is how we're going to do all the cable runs to measure them to size. Just like that. Insert the cable and the sleeve in the key, and then use the nut and tighten it down. Should be pretty easy. If the cable runs into the wood on the other end, you can always take it out and trim it a little bit shorter, as long as you're trimming past the sleeve. Okay, once I get it fairly snug, I am going to, because I can't hardly do it with this tool, switch to a L Allen wrench. Now I'm using an Allen wrench with an L so I can get some torque on this, and I want this cable to be nice and tight, and you can tension both ends almost 3/4 of an inch, which should be plenty of the way we installed it. Sorry if my hands are getting in the way, but I'm going to tighten this down hard. The other set screw is already 3 turns in, but it can go much further. So I'm going to tighten this up a little bit, and I'll show you what kind of tension I'm looking for by pulling on the cable. So the cable is never going to be totally tight, but this is what I'm looking for. Something fairly tight like this. Well, the weight of it's always going to cause it to sag a little bit. That's normal. So you need to do this with all the runs.
This chapter is just for people using the webbing strap system. If you're not using it, skip it. In this clip, we had a few audio issues, so I'll voice over it. When the canopy is closed, we want it to extend all the way to this beam.
And then it's going to go back and retract all the way over there. So we want the flat side of the track to go towards the side that's going to open. So we just snap these on, 1, 2, and there's our first one. Then you just grab the second one, same thing. Keep going. Now this is a 1x19 cable, and a 1x19 cable slides much better than a 7x7 cable. There we go.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, it does slide super nice.
Oh yeah, it does. These are stainless steel cable stops, and this is what we're going to use to secure the fixed end. So I'm going to remove the nut, and then I just simply slide the canopy up against the edge, and then put this on. Let's just put it on right here, and then we can slide it. Get it started. So we put it on, and then we slide it up to here, and I'm going to do it so that I can actually release them by putting it on the side. I'm not going to tighten it down all the way until I'm happy with everything, but that locks it in place. And we'll put one over there as well.
In lieu of using the open-close rope pulley system, you could use the webbing strap system, which is shown here. If you select the webbing strap system, you'll save some money because the open rope pulley system does cost more. Let's explain it.
So this is the webbing strap system, and the idea is that this is also a pull cord, but you also have a fender clip. And this fender clip, I would bend this in so it's a little bit closer to the surface. The D-ring goes onto this, and it secures it when the canopy is retracted all the way back. And it would go up and around the canopy and be attached here, someplace where you'll be able to securely attach it. So the idea is that we would screw it in at this locale or a little bit higher, and you could obviously adjust the webbing if it were too loose, but this would secure it at this end. And as you can see, there is a little bit too much webbing here, so I would have to readjust that because the fastener fits down a lot further here. But this is not the system I'm going to be using because it's not the superior system. So to open it, what you do is you unhook it from this, and usually I use a boat hook, and then I just simply go like this. Then at this end, what I use is a small portion of the strap, and we put another fender hook up here at your preferred location, and then you use a boat hook and you secure it at this position so the canopy stays shut, protects you from the weather. And again, you could shorten this if you felt that that were too long. You would adjust your webbing. We're not going to be using the webbing strap system for this canopy. We're going to be using the open-close rope pulley system. So I'm going to take this track off and we're going to put on the other one and show you how that's done.
The remaining 3 chapters are dedicated to the pulley open-close system. If you're using the webbing strap, you're basically done. Here's a look ahead at some of the pulleys. This is the double block pulley with the L bracket. That's what I'll call it, a double block pulley. Here is the double block pulley above the control line, in other words, the line that runs down the post. And then on the end that the canopy is affixed to, this is what I call the single block pulley.
So the double block goes where the canopy is going to be closed. The single block pulley will go on the end where the canopy is stored, in other words, fully retracted. For each run, I'm going to find the middle and I'm going to mark it. It's right here with my chalk. So each one of our carriers from the bottom of our board is 4.5 inches. Yours would be different. I'm going to go a 1/2 inch higher for this fastener. So I'm going to make it at 5 inches and I'm going to mark at the middle position. That's where we're going to mount this, right there at that X. We're going to take our L bracket. It's got 2 screw holes. This one actually has 3. And we're going to put it right on the X right in the middle of it. And we're going to use the screws that are provided, stainless steel. And we're going to screw it in at that locale.
This L bracket has 3 holes because it's a prototype. The one that we manufacture will only have 2 here.
Before I tighten that up, I'm going to make sure it's straight. I'm going to put the second screw in right here. You got to put this bracket on before you put the block on. Make sure it's straight. And then tighten it well. There we go. We're going to take our double pulley and we're going to put the stainless steel bolt in, and then we're going to run this through the hole in front, making sure that it's at the front facing like this, and then we're going to put the nylock nut that locks. I'm going to try to keep my hands out of the way. I know they're big. Like that, and then we're going to take a Phillips screwdriver up here to hold the bolt in place, and 9mm socket, and tighten this down. Make sure it's nice and tight. There we go. So we installed the double block pulley on the end where the canopy will retract to the beam. Okay, so the double block goes where the canopy is going to be closed. The single block pulley will go on the end where the canopy is stored, in other words, fully retracted. So we're going to do the same thing on the next run, putting it exactly in the center. For us, 5 inches up from the bottom of the beam, a 1/2 inch higher than the cable runs. We're not going to show that. So we have this post here. Control line goes down aside the post, so I don't want to go clear over here because it'll run into that. So I'm going to be right beside this, and I've already measured up 5 inches from the bottom, exactly the same spot for the double pulley. And this block is going to actually screw into the surface with a stainless steel screw in the center here, and it's going to go at an angle. So basically 45 degrees with this going away from where the ropes are going to come through. So at that position, I'm going to take a Phillips screwdriver, and first I'm going to screw this one in. You can make it fairly tight, but don't go super tight. And then I'm going to turn that to about 45 degrees, and then I'm going to take a smaller screw, stainless steel, and we'll have the size on the screen, and we're going to put it in this hole here, and this keeps it from turning. Now don't tighten that one down too hard, just enough to keep it from turning, and that is installed.
On the open side of the canopy at the middle position, install a small fixed head block single pulley with strap eye in the middle position of the canopy. As the pulley hangs down from the strap eye, the bottom of the pulley should be close to even with the wire runs on the left and the right of it. You'll want to do this for each canopy run. Let's explain it.
So next I'm going to put this block on, and I really want it to be a little bit above the track or right at the track. So I'm going to mount it on right here. There's where my track will stop. So I'm going to screw it in with the strap eye at that locale with just the Phillips stainless steel screws that you get at a hardware store.
Upon reflection, it would have been more effective if the single block pulley were positioned 1 inch lower than what is currently depicted. This adjustment would allow it to rest slightly on top of the flange of the awning track. However, once the line is installed, it will not pose any issues. Screw the strap eye with pulley 1 inch lower.
So there's what it looks like, and it should really hang this way because it'll just make the operation of the rope better.
And here's a look ahead with the canopies installed, which we'll do later on. This is with the line running through that pulley. Next, on one of the pergola's posts on the control line side, that's the side with the foot block double pulleys attached, we will install the cheek block and the cam cleat.
We mounted the cheek block about 4 foot up from the ground, and we just use these 2 screws to do so, and it mounts up like this. And then above that, by anywhere from 8 to 12 inches, mount this, what do you call this thing? Yeah, a cam cleat. And if you're not careful, it will come apart without the screws are what hold it together. So I've already mounted it at this position, and that needs to be done at the control line side.
Before we attach the canopy to the wire rope, we're going to feed the control line into the blocks and pulleys.
Okay, so if you're using the webbing to control the swag, just put it on like this, open up the clip, put it on, don't roll it over yet, and then make sure that you run this straight to the next one so that it doesn't get twisted, and do the same thing to this one. Once they are all on, then we'll push them down like that. Okay, so right now we're just putting them on like that, making sure there's no twists in the webbing all the way down. We'll do it on this run, we'll also do it on that run, we'll do it to the other canopy as well. Okay, we're going to be using the pulley open-close rope system, and we're going to be opening and closing our wire hung canopy with that. So here's some facts about it. This line can only handle about 3 canopies, and then if you have 4 canopies, you're going to need a separate control line. So obviously you'd split it by 2 by 2 and have a control line that controls 2. So basically the max is 3 canopies, otherwise it'll be very difficult to pull it. So we're here at the control line side here, and we are going to go to the single block pulley on this other end of the pergola to start.
This shows the order for running the lines for a 2 canopy configuration. Take note that it shows the canopies already up and the lines attached, which will not happen until the next chapter. And this one shows the lines for a 3 canopy configuration. You may want to pause the video here when running your lines. This may be helpful.
We're going to run the line through the bottom of the block, and we're going to tie it with about a 3-foot tail loosely. So this is just to keep it from coming out of the block. So just with an overhand knot, there we go. Now we're going to go to the double block pulley over there. The control line is over there running down that post. So we want this line to go into this double block going towards the next canopy and at the top block. So run it through like this and then feed all the line through. We're going to take the line and go over the cable runs. I want to interrupt here because when we ran the lines to this second double pulley, we went through the top and then went down to the single block and then came back through the bottom. But we actually want to reverse that process. Why is that? Because it crossed the lines. The system still worked with the way we did it, but there's a better way to do it. And what I'd refer you to is the illustration that we showed a little bit earlier on. I'll show it to you again, and that is the appropriate way to do it. So I have the text on the screen to show you what to do, and you also have the illustration that you can refer back to.
The illustration shows it correctly. That's step 3 and step 5. So step 3 will be through the bottom, and step 5 will be through the top. Here we should have went through the bottom portion of this block or pulley rather than the top.
This is the second canopy, and we're going to go down to the single block over on that end, but we need to pull all the line through. Then we're going to go through the bottom and out the top of the single block pulley for this, the second canopy. And we're actually going to run it all the way to the double block.
In this next clip, we show going through the bottom, but it should really be the top.
Now we go into the bottom of the double block for the second canopy going this direction if you don't have a third canopy. If you have a third canopy, you'd run it through the bottom block going this way and repeat the steps like we did just here. But since this is our ending canopy, we go this direction, back towards the control line side. Feed all the line through. We're going to go over our cable runs, and we're going to skip this block and go to the double block above the control line. We're going to go through either one of these, it doesn't matter, through the top and down the bottom, feed all the line through to our cheek block on the control line. There we go. And now we're going to go through this. Doesn't really matter which way you go. And let's do that now. Now we're going to go back up to the double block pulley. We're going to go through the bottom of this, the remaining block, and feed this all the way through and go over our cable run here to this double block, and it's going to go in from the bottom of it, and we're going to run it down to the single block pulley from whence we started. Okay, so now we're going to take this line and we're only going to fasten it here with a little bit of looseness because we need some excess line. So see how this line is loose? We're going to leave it like that so that we can actually tie it off. So all I'm going to do is secure this with a double hand knot, and that way it just doesn't come out. And we have plenty of excess, which I like. Don't cut that off. Leave it loose like this.
Now that our control line is ran through all of the pulleys correctly, it's time to clip our canopies to the wire.
Okay, these are cable wire stops, and I removed the nut, and we want to put this on, and we're not going to tighten it down. We're just going to put one on each one of the cable runs loosely like this so that we can lock the last bar up against this side where it's going to be stored. Okay, so this is the end of the canopy that's going to be up against the edge or the pergola that is where it's stored. In other words, it has a single block, and I also put these on so that I can move them up to lock the last one in place. So all we're going to do here, let's put this webbing in the right spot, is we're going to take the last one and I'm going to clip it like that with the webbing down like it is, and clip this one behind this wire stop, and then we're actually going to push these up and lock it in place with the set screw going that direction, so it's easy to undo if we have to. So 5mm Allen key. I'm going to try to keep my hands out of the way. Go ahead and lock it down with some force if I can get it in there. There we go. And we'll do the same thing with this one with the screw facing out so that I can easily take it off if I want to. So as you put them up, just make sure the webbing is sitting flat and just snap each one of them in place until you get to the end. Now we're just going to do the exact same thing to our first canopy, and I'll show you what's next after we get this up. Oops, oh, we got to we got to put these. So these have to get pushed over and locked. I forgot to do that.
And finally, it's time to adjust our control line ropes.
Now, since we have slack on the line on the other side, I'm going to just basically pull it out so that the slack is basically right here, because I'm going to cut the line here. Now, that should give me plenty. You just need a little bit of slack, and we only want to cut one of these lines, and I'm going to do the one that's coming out the bottom of the block here. Don't cut both lines. And one of them is going to fall to the ground, but I have plenty of area to tie a knot. So I'm going to use a hot knife to keep the line from unraveling. This is a Sailrite edge hot knife. Okay, hold on to this one end. Now we're going to take this and we're going to feed it through that hole
From the back.
from the back. So this is the bottom of the block coming through the back, and I'm just going to do one overhand knot, which is sufficient. And don't do it super tight, because we'll have to do some adjustment to that knot. Okay. Now my helper grabbed the line that fell on the ground, and what I'm going to do with it, hopefully without too much twist, there'll always be a little bit of a twist in the line in the middle, is I'm going to feed it through the front coming out the back, and I'm going to tie an overhand knot on that side, which let's see if I can get my hand out of the way. So I'm going to do it right here. Good. All right. Now we're going to take this and we're going to push it up against the canopy, if I can. Let's see if I can. Oh yeah, I'm going to have to release that line over there. Remember, we tied it loosely to the first block because I can't push this all the way up and have all the bars on top. So I'm going to loosen that line. So now it's loose. It's able to be pushed up all the way against the other bars, and the canopy is in its storage state, what some people call open. I think it's closed, but it's open. This is the end of the line that we originally started with. I forgot to mention that we taped it so that we knew which line we actually tied up first. It goes through the top of the block and it comes out the bottom, and then it goes through this hole and we tie a knot on it, but we need to take up the slack. Actually, I'm just going to tie a knot with about 3 foot of excess, and then we'll move this around because I got to get the other slack out of the other end of the line, and it's all on the ground right now. So I'll pull it up. So this is the other line that was on the ground, and I'm going to feed it through. Now we have a lot of slack, so I'm going to pull that through, and we're going to have to do some adjustment here. Make sure the other canopy or canopies is pushed up against the beam, which it is all the way. And let's go ahead and keep this one fairly taut. This one still needs to be tight like this. So you work all the thing out. So I'm going to put a knot right here, and I'm going to put a knot right here, and then we'll check for adjustments. Now it's still not tensioned right, but I'm going to cut off all this excess, leaving at least a foot, just so that I have some adjustment, because it's hard to tie a knot with all this rope. So that knot's about right. This one, I'm going to pull the slack out and look at my lines, make sure they're tight everywhere, and they are. And then I'm going to dress the knot just by loosening it and push it up to that bar. Not too hard. Now, is it perfect? We won't know until we actually work on pulling it on the control line. So I'm not going to cinch it down super hard. I'm going to leave this tails in case we need them. So now what we want to do is we want to pull on the control line and adjust if it's off a little bit. And as you can see, this one is advancing faster than that one. So we're going to adjust the knots until they're actually advancing at the same rate. This one needs to be tightened up. If you have some slack in your line, you can actually just move your control block down. You'd have to patch those holes in the wood, which we will do, but that will take up the slack sometimes. So I'm going to move it over to this position.
The wire hung canopy is now complete and ready for use. Protect your family and friends from the sun with a wire hung canopy for your pergola. Take a few measurements and check out the Sailrite fabric calculator to see the materials that are required for your particular pergola. If you'd like to see a list of the tools that we used, they are listed on the fabric calculator. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and also subscribe so you can be notified of new tutorial videos when they become available. We're trying to reach 500,000 subscribers, so your help is much appreciated. I'm Eric Grant, and from all of us here at Sailrite, thanks for watching.